to the Behind the Tee podcast with Rob and Kelly. For the past couple of weeks, we've been talking a lot about the more fun part of curling and things related to fashion and fashion faux pas. But this week, we're going to take it a little more technical. Usually after games, we like to talk about games we've seen on TV and like the strategy and what we would have done, what the team should have done. But this year, because there's nothing to comment on, we're going to throw it back and talk about an old game, but a very memorable game.
Very memorable indeed. I remember this end. We were line 7. We had a chance to get 8. And I think you made a comment about how rare 8-enders are. And okay, no, we're not talking about that end. We're not talking about that end.
Maybe we can talk about that when it comes to superstitions and curling and how I jinxed our 8th end. But that's a story for another time. Actually, today we're going to talk about a famous, or actually, maybe it's better to say infamous. Very infamous last end. So we're throwing it back to the 2009 Men's World Curling Championship final of Murdoch versus Kevin Martin. This 10th end, I think, is one that's going to go down in the history books. When it happened, it definitely took the curling world by storm, and everyone and their mother had a comment about it and what should have been done, what they did wrong, and everyone's opinion surrounding that.
12 years later, I think everybody still remembers watching this, or remembers maybe not how the end built up, but everybody remembers how it ended.
I know too that this end is still used as an example or as an exercise for a lot of like coaching and instructing. I know a couple of years ago I went to junior training camp, and this end was one that we played, and we went over with the junior curlers too, to get their like thoughts and opinions on it. So it didn't turn out well for Canada, but I guess it does serve as a good training tool for future
I really
curlers.
think so. Yeah, it's an excellent case study. And let's apologize to Kevin Martin, the next curler that we're now throwing under the bus. We've taken our shots at a few provinces and fashion things, and now we're coming after Kevin Martin. Sorry, Kevin, if you're listening.
Yeah, and I guess not only in terms of strategy, but also in terms of team dynamics. It was a very interesting end. Let's say not everyone on the team agreed with the decisions made. Before we start going through the end, shot by shot, what made this end so memorable is the fact that Kevin Martin did something that you rarely ever see in curling. Would that be a fair statement, Rob?
No, sorry. That's the Randy Furby. Oh, there, we brought in our Randy Furby thing for the week. That was the accusation on him. But no, of course we're joking. The Kevin Martin throwing his first rock away in the 10th end.
Mm-hmm. That is just something you never see. I mean, it's quite common for skips to throw their last rock if there's no shot
That's
for
right.
them, or they don't need to. Even then, it doesn't happen that often. But
and we've thrown our fair share of rocks away by accident, of course.
Mm-hmm. But throwing
this was intentional.
A skip's first rock away, intentional. Well, I mean, if you're throwing it away, it is intentional. But yeah, that was one. Some people agreed with him, and a lot of other people didn't. I don't know where you stand on the topic, Rob.
Oh, we'll see. I think you and I are agreeing on this, though. I know we disagree on things almost every week, but I think this time we're gonna see eye to eye.
I guess, okay, so let's just jump right into it. So just to set up the end a little bit, so this is the final game of the 2009 World's Men Curling Championship, David Murdoch versus Kevin Martin. And also coming up to this game, so this was the third time they've met each other during this championship, and Murdoch won the previous 2 games.
That's right. I remember thinking how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in a row, and I didn't think he'd get him the third time.
So Martin in this game was playing with his 2010 Olympics team with John Morris, Ben Hebert, and Mark Kennedy, and that foursome was like a force to be reckoned with. Like they
Absolutely.
were dominating in Canada. obviously won the gold medal at the next Olympic Games. But yeah, they were a very tough team to beat. So
Yeah,
Murdoch
probably
was,
one of the greatest teams ever put together.
and David Murdoch was definitely like the underdog in this game.
Right. But somehow, like, the only team on the planet that kind of had Kevin Martin's number.
So before we get started, if you do want to follow along, we're going to try and describe the end as best as possible. But you can find this end on YouTube. Like the video that we found is hosted by Curling Canada on YouTube. We'll also post the URL link below on our YouTube channel, Behind the Tee, so you can listen there as well.
That's right. We're on YouTube now and Instagram. Follow us on Instagram as well.
And of course, on any podcast hosting
That's right.
website,
We're
we're there.
we're on every social media form. We're unlike the president who's getting kicked off. We're expanding. Sorry,
um,
little
a
topical
little
reference
bit
there.
dab right there. I don't know if you saw the video, Rob, but like I didn't realize how young the three guys looked compared to now. Like they look like babies.
They did look younger. And what I'll just throw out there too is if you're watching this or listening to us on YouTube, we're going to try to, we'll see how this works, but we'll try to chart where the rocks go as well as we talk. Will this work? Will it won't? I don't know.
No, it's technology is not our strongest asset here.
No, but we'll try because if you think to back when we did our pet peeves episode, one that I forgot that I just want to throw out here quickly for 30 seconds is when people describe shots, when they say, "Oh, I made this great shot. There was a rock on the 8 foot, it was frozen on theirs, and I came in off one in the 12 foot, and I rolled over to the 4 foot." And you're supposed to like animate in your head exactly what happened. You lose me the moment you try to describe a situation.
Yeah, no, I'm a very visual person as well. So
Me
it's
too.
nice that you made
Me
this.
too. So we're gonna try to make this a bit more visual, but we'll see how it goes.
I'll try to give you timestamps to the video that we just referenced so that if you're ever you want to follow at the same time, you can move forward there. Because this end was about 25 minutes long, which is very unusual for a curling end. It was the final end of the final. So obviously you're going to take your time, but 25 minutes is really
That's
long.
pretty long.
So to set you up, so this was the 10th end of the game, and the score was 6-6. Murdoch took 2 the previous end, so Martin's coming in here with the hammer. So as any team would do, standard strategy, when you have the first shot, you just want to put up a guard.
That's right.
That's what Murdoch did. Of course, for the 4 guard rule
Mm-hmm.
for the free zone. What is the name of this rule? Is it the 4?
The 4 rock rule, free guard zone. You know what we mean. The modified Moncton rule. There's a throwback.
Ooh,
Actually, this
wow.
was in Moncton,
Oh,
the
really?
birthplace of the free whatever we're calling it.
I was like, I don't want to say the free guard zone because now it's 5 rocks instead of 4.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was 4 rocks. So Kevin Martin with Ben Hubert's first shot, they try to do the tick, which good call, but it's missed. This is before the Lisa Weagle days, so ticks.
They didn't show it on TV, but I bet Ben was pretty pissed off.
I'm sure he's gonna get a lot more pissed off after that. And then again, Murdoch puts up a second center guard, which again, good shot.
Yeah, and we should note the centerline guards are kind of close together. I think they were trying to go high-low, like one right over the hog line, one really deep to make the double peel pretty hard. But they're pretty close together. They're about a meter apart, maybe a little more.
They're separate enough that you can. It's hard to make the double peel. Like it's harder, but it's still possible
But
to
it's
do.
they didn't quite go high-low.
Yeah, but both guards are pretty high up in the guard area.
Mm-hmm.
Ben on his second shot does a perfect come around top button right behind the guards. What would you do next, Rob?
This is
If you're Scotland's
I'm Scotland. I've
second
already lost track of the rocks. I would be coming in, freezing to it.
good call. So that's what Scotland does. They
Right.
attempt
Or maybe
the
even a
corner,
tight guard, but something towards the middle.
and it kind of makes it. I think he taps the yellow a little bit, so there is a little bit of separation. But yeah, so the Team Canada has a yellow on the button, and then Scotland kind of top corner.
Right. And I think we should point out it was not a great freeze by Scotland. It bounced wide open and tapped Canada's up to the button. And here may be big mistake number one.
So this brings us to our first point. There's two options here. Either and agree with you can contradict me or not, Rob. Option one would just be to peel the guards because you can do that at this stage. This is the second first rock. Or you be a little more aggressive, and because the red rock that is in the house is exposed, you could come down with hack weight and just do a little hit and roll in, like not a full control, like just hack weight, just tap it back and roll in, which is what they end up doing. What do you think, Rob?
For sure. If I have John Morris, Mark Kennedy, Kevin Martin throwing next, I would be peeling.
I guess hindsight is 2020.
That's the other thing. It's a bit of a leading question, but
Yeah, and knowing how the end ended up, it would be a good call to do the peel. However, at the same time, like you already have one loaded or one lockdown in the house, you have an easy shot to put another hit and have two buried behind guards.
maybe, yeah.
Like, but you have, if you think about it in the sense of you don't know what's going to happen in the future, it's an aggressive call, yes.
But I think also, like, I would do that in any other end, but the 10th end of a tie game when you have hammer, I think, one actually interesting thing is I don't think anybody would do it now. I think now, maybe because of this game, people are peel all the way.
For sure. And we definitely know if we were in juniors, they'd be peeling all day long.
Right. And we should also add that if it were the two of us playing, I know we would be coming in. This doesn't apply to what we would do. We would go into lockdown mode.
Oh, for sure. So Kennedy does the hit and roll. He gets the red rock out, but his yellow doesn't roll fully buried. It's kind of sticking out on the left there if you're looking from the skips.
Right. I mean, left.
Yeah.
Correct. You know what I mean.
So then Scotland, what is Scotland? Sorry, I'm reading my notes here.
Yeah, it was Peter Smith, the second. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so then Scotland comes and kind of attempts to do the same thing on the other side.
Right, and this was one of the, I thought, worst thrown rocks of the end. He came out quite inside. He was trying to come behind these high centerline guards, and he wrecked on one of them.
Yeah, the one closest to the house.
That's right, and he didn't wreck badly. He just kind of rubbed off. So he rolled kind of top 8, yeah, but it was pretty much all over the guard. It was not going to get by.
Yeah, I mean, it still ended up in a okay position. I guess if you were scoring the game, you'd give that like a 2 out of 4.
He got pretty lucky on his roll. Like when you rub off
Yeah.
a guard, you're usually, what can you accomplish? And he rolled right top 8. So,
Yeah, it's kind of like he half made the shot.
but here's my question, Kelly. And like, let's assume he had thrown that rock much better, and he buries it, because we're looking at the situation now. The rock's kind of wide open, but if he had buried it,
Oh, I think Martin would have peeled.
yeah,
Like, I feel like this thing is certain things. So because this red rock was now in the open, you also have a choice. Do you go for the peel? Well, but then you can do the same shot again, right? You kind of decided that you're going a little more aggressively. And if you make the shot, now you're sitting 3 behind cover
yeah.
at the top half of the house. So it's a good position to be in. But I agree. If he had made his shot perfectly, I think Martin would have peeled, and we wouldn't be talking about this today.
No. And so, yeah, in the end, he does call for Mark Kennedy to hit and roll, and he's line 3, all pretty much behind cover. It looks really good for any other end than a 10th end of a tie game, but
Yeah, and now you can say not only is the yellow rock that is in, oh yeah, I guess we have to say Scotland is throwing red and Canada's throwing yellow in case we're throwing up
yes.
colors here. So Canada's yellow rock on the button is also, not only is it buried by the 2 Scotland rocks up front, but now the other 2 Canadian rocks that are in the 8-foot are kind of staggered guarding the one in the button. So the moment, it's not a bad situation for Canada to be in.
No, it's just interesting that last decision, though, was brought on by a poorly thrown rock by Scotland. It was a poorly thrown rock that ended up being brilliant.
Yeah, I guess it kind of saved them in the end.
Yeah, it's because the interesting thing is if that rock had been thrown better and it goes behind the guard, then I think certainly Kevin Martin's peeling, and then we're not here podcasting about it.
For sure. But you know what? There's a lot of other ifs in this game, in this end
That is
that
true.
could have happened.
That is true. Oh, and one more quick thought, just because it's easy for us to say, "Oh, here's what they should have done" in hindsight. But I found it interesting rewatching the whole end on YouTube last night because Ray Turnbull, the commentator, is going, "Well, okay, that's really good, but peel the guard." Maybe you could see that he wanted the guard peeled, and I was like, oh, credit, because we're looking at this 12 years later, so. It
Yeah.
was impressive. At the time, I wasn't even picking up on this. I was like, "Oh yeah, what a shot!"
Yeah, well, yeah, if you're just thinking tactically, shot by shot, like this makes a lot of sense. But kind of like you mentioned before, it is the final end of a tie game. Like you want to keep the rule of thumb or the general strategy that people follow is to keep it, if you have the last rock, to keep it the front clear as much as possible so you have an open shot on your last shot or an easier shot. But we'll get to that. So then Scotland comes in and they tap the yellow that is on the left up to the tee line
That's right.
and kind of roll in. So now two rocks on the tee line are pretty much in line with each other, with the red just a little higher up than the other yellow rock in the 8 foot.
The angles are still pretty good for Canada, but there's a lot of rocks in play.
Now it's with the red rock in the house too. You're starting to get a little nervous.
Hmm.
So here we're at the 5 minute point, and it's Morris's first shot, the third on Martin's team, and Kevin Martin calls the double peel, and Morris misses it. It only takes off the top one, the
That's right.
top Scotland guard. So then Scotland calls a timeout. So I guess would you we're in a position now. So what does Scotland do? Like obviously, if they go in the house, would Martin then take off the other guard and then you're left guardless, or do you waste a shot putting another guard out?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's best to come in here just because even though they're only down to one guard, that guard is like right zone 2, which means that anywhere you go as a guard, the double peel for John Morris, he's not going to miss 2 of those. So I kind of like coming in. It's kind of like having a guard as far apart as you can, even though it's in the house.
So during their timeout, obviously the coaches comes out, and basically what they were discussing is to tap that corner red that they have in the top 8 into the crotch of the 2 that are sitting on the tee line.
And if I remember correctly, it doesn't work out perfectly, right?
The red is tapped into their crotch, but they come a little heavy, and the yellow on the left that was sitting on the tee line is pushed to just back 4, like just past the tee line, and it rolls a little bit
Yeah,
towards the yellow in the
it's
center.
not how they drew it up, but it ended up being another thing that, in retrospect, boy, was that brilliant.
And also to say that their shot rock stays top, like by top biting 8, guarding the shot that they just tapped up.
Right, and even though it didn't work out, I think this is a good point to bring up that if we look at the Scottish rock that they just raised, the red one in the top 4, how are you going to get rid of that?
Yeah. Well, this is the end is getting quite tricky
Yeah,
now. The angles are all over the place. It's kind of staggered because you have it's like red, yellow, just staggered left and right. And don't forget that guard at the
hmm
top of at the number 2 position.
there is still a guard, although not for long, because if I remember correctly, that's what they got rid of next, right?
Exactly. So now Morris again, I think it had they done this with Kennedy's shots, we would not be in this position.
Hmm.
So now it's an open house. There are no more guards for the rest of the end. Everything is happening in the house. So Morris peels, then Murdoch taps the red he just threw.
Okay, so this is the one where, yeah, so this rock comes in, I think, a little bit more outside than they wanted. It didn't curl as much as they had hoped. And instead of hitting the red straight back to tap it, it just kind of ricochets and winds up in a position where it's kind of frozen on the other red one.
hmm
And even though, and this is another one, they didn't draw it up this way exactly, but how are you going to get rid of either of well, the top one you could get rid of, but how are you going to get rid of that red rock that is second shot is beyond me.
Yes. So let's
I'm glad you agree.
Okay, so now we're at, and remember this time we're at the 11, just under 12 minutes here, and we're getting ready for Martin's first shot. Now, Rob, if you don't mind, can we just take a moment to reposition the end in case we lost anyone up until now?
Yes.
So the way the rocks are situated, we have a yellow on the top button. Second shot is Scotland, that is cornering that yellow button on the left, just off center. Then third shot is the yellow Canadian rock again in the 4 foot on the left, just behind T line. Fourth shot is red again. That's cornered at a like 45-degree angle to the other Scotland red rock. And then after that is Canada yellow shot, just off center line on the right, guarding the button shot. And then we have a red in the 12-foot, but that doesn't come into play. So we can kind of ignore that for now. So that's where we're at.
Right, and no more guards.
And then a 7-minute long discussion
With 2 timeouts back to back.
with 2 timeouts. Thank God Canada saved all their timeouts. But they were doing good on time, so no worries there. So they're discussing Martin's first shot and what to do. And a couple minutes in, after discussing, so the front end, Hebert and Kennedy also came down. This was a whole team powwow. Jules also came down. Basically, what happens, like they're all looking at different angles. The boys, sorry, Kevin Martin, but the boys on the team, they're definitely looking at what we can hit and the angles. So one of the options they were thinking about was to blast the top corner red. So where I said there's 2 red rocks in the 4-foot, kind of at a 45-degree. So they're talking about just throwing a bullet at that top red one and just hope that everything goes flying.
Yeah.
Martin was not a fan of that. Another thing they were talking about was to hit the top yellow. So that yellow that is just off center on the right, guarding the yellow rock in the button. They're talking about hitting that into the reds on the side and hoping that like the red closest to the button would
kind of skitter out.
Yeah, like it would obviously ricochet off the yellow, but they're hoping it would move laterally enough for the back yellow to still count. At this point, it kind of became Martin kind of got it into his head that regardless, like whatever they do, Scotland doesn't have a shot. And you keep hearing him say, like, well, what does he do? He doesn't have a shot. He doesn't have a shot.
Well, he does have he has a chance to get shot, but he's going to leave something not
Wide
so great,
open
right?
for him. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like whatever. I mean, he's gonna have something to throw at.
Right.
But
That's about, by the way, the only easy question to answer is what will Scotland do if I throw it? They have to get shot, and there's really only one way.
Yeah, and this is kind of what they're talking about too. They're like, okay, if we do this, this happens, but then what does Scotland do, and then what does that leave us? Which are great questions that you should ask yourselves when deciding on a shot like this. But there's definitely two train of thought in this team at this moment. The boys are definitely like, we gotta hit something, and Kevin's just like, no, let's think about this. I don't think he has a shot. And I don't know if you want to mention, Kevin Martin was an amazing player. I think he knows so much about the game and probably like the most respected curling
Right.
player to be and will be for a long time. But I know that this comment came back quite a bit after this game, and running off a little bit of ego kind of got into like had a play here, and kind of he psyched himself out a little bit
I mean, I've
because
heard
it's
that. Yeah.
because it's a very unusual comment, especially for and like this, like I can understand if there were 6 guards up front and his yellows were like dead buried. A comment like that would make sense. Like, yeah, he doesn't have a shot, like, or the shot he has, like an angle of 10-foot angle raise, like, yeah, it's really hard to make. But in this situation where the rocks are kind of scattered and it's an open house, like,
Yeah, and we're talking about one of the greatest ever hitters who I'm sure even if angles are not great, he can just up the weight until it works out for him. But
exactly. Like,
but
I
I've
think
heard yeah, or sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Well, I've heard people say things like that before, and I don't really agree. I don't think it's really fair to say that. Is it true that maybe that he overthought this, perhaps, or and maybe hitting something could have cleared away or made it a little bit more open? But and of course, I've heard every curler's opinion on this pretty much. But one thing that I need to throw out there is right after this happened. I don't think a lot of people will remember this, but I actually do. There was a grand slam or something on TV like a week later, and Kevin Martin was there and he was being interviewed over it. And they actually sat him down at a telestrator with a picture of what the end looked like. And he gave his rationale for why he threw it away. And he diagrammed what would happen if he went for all these other shots with an actual proper telestrator, unlike the ghetto PowerPoint thing that you're looking at right now if you're following this on YouTube. But I remember, and I can't remember what he said exactly. I wish I could find that clip. It would be a wonderful follow up to this famous end, but it made a bit of sense. After he had explained it, there were some things that I remember having going, oh, I didn't think of that.
I mean, the man knows what he's talking about, and I'm sure he had a logic to it. But we all know that curling is a sport that you play too, and it's prone to error. So whatever strategy you come up with, or like the tactics you choose, um, it all depends on if you make the shot and if the other team makes the shot, or if they miss the shot, or you have to make your shot, will really like affect the following shots. And I don't know, like just looking at this to say that, oh, he doesn't have a shot to win the game is a little premature.
That he won't have a shot. Yeah,
Yeah, if the situation was different and there were a it's kinda like we've seen this in mixed double where you actually do not have a shot because there's so much crap up front and the rocks are dead buried, then yeah, I would be more supportive of this. Um, but one comment that kept coming up, so like I said, the boys were really like, "We have to hit something. We have to do something." They're showing out all the options, and Kevin Martin at some point he was really like, you can tell he really had it in his head like, no, we should throw it away because he has nothing. And I don't know who said it, if it was Morris or Hebert, because the
it
camera
was
wasn't
somebody
on
on the
them.
front end though. Yeah,
But I actually think it might have been Morris, and he said something. Morris is just like, well, at least we have something to shoot at if we hit something. As in, like, we have another shot. Like, we whatever, even if we hit something, Scotland, yeah, has limited choices, but we still have another shot to come. Like, this is not your last shot.
yeah. It's important to acknowledge that whatever that shot would have been, it would have been pretty tough. Like he was not going to have an easy shot. He would have had something, I think, but certainly nothing easy.
This is also part of team dynamics that comes into play, is that, whoever the shooter is, and at this stage it's the skip, like if the skip made up their mind as to what shot they want to throw, you can't really unchange it. Or if you force them to make another shot, odds are they're going to miss it, right?
Yeah, and normally I agree with everything related to what you just said about how you've got to be supportive of the skip and um, front ends that try to call the game or can. But this is a very unusual situation. This is one where
Yeah.
they stopped and talked for 7 minutes. You said, and they're about to go for a shot that none of us have ever seen. Like I think if I were Morris and Martin, even though I would try to keep my mouth shut, I think I'd have more to say than just I don't like this.
Yeah,
I
no,
could see myself like lying down in the hack going, no, I'm not letting you do this. This is an intervention.
yeah, I mean, if I were them, I'd be really pissed too, but at the end of the day, I guess the bear, as they call him.
Yeah, if Kevin Martin has recruited me to curl with him, he can call whatever the hell he likes.
So at so yeah, so they just, after a lot of back and forth, honestly, I think that one of the two hit options that the young guys kind of pointed at, I think I don't have one preference over the other. At this point, I think had they done either shot, it would have been a different outcome than what actually happened.
Maybe. Yeah, it's hard to say because like you would need to see the way the rocks would go.
Again, yeah, like hindsight is 2020.
Right. And what it comes down to is that red rock that is second shot, the Scotland rock that ultimately does win them the game, is really, really hard to remove no matter what you throw. And like you
Yeah.
can maybe move it around, but you're not going to get it out. It's pretty locked in there. And whatever you've just shot or moved around might now get in even more in your way for the last shot. So,
Yeah, well, I guess what they'd have left is either an open-ish hit on the left, or they can tap the yellow that is sitting in the 8 foot. And it's I say it's sitting in the 8 foot. It is a couple inches away from the 4 foot, so he would have to raise that to at least full
right to the
four.
lid or to the lid, I think. Yeah.
Well, the red wouldn't be that close to the button after a takeout, I don't think. So yeah, he would have to move it to the button, which is what, about 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah. Easy peasy.
well,
If you're Kevin Martin.
easy than what he actually ended up having to do. Um, but let's move on.
Yeah.
So like I said, they started this discussion at the just under 12 minutes, and Martin shoots his shot at 18 minutes. Now it's Murdoch's last shot, and I just want to point out that he has like less than a minute to throw this rock.
That's right. There was no 7-minute discussion for David Murdoch.
No, well, I guess they get to capitalize on the time that Martin spent talking about it, but they
I
have
guess so.
under a minute to throw this rock. So what they end up doing is hitting the top red. The yellow in the button goes flying. The red that was touching the button is now corner frozen and shot on against the yellow that was in the back four, and the other red just rolls T line past the other red.
Yeah.
The rule for timing is that the rock has to cross the T line at the throwing end before for it to count. And
Mm-hmm.
he threw that with 23 seconds left.
Plenty of time.
Just to situate yourself a little bit and put yourself in Murdoch's shoes, this is your last rock. You don't have hammer. It's the 2009 World Curling Championship, and you're throwing. If you miss this shot, you lose the game, right? So this is the winning shot. You have 30 seconds to throw it. Like, you don't have time to sit and like compose yourself in the hack, take an extra breath. Like, he pretty much went in, sat down, and just threw the rock, and he made it.
And it's a good thing that at least, unlike Canada, they knew what they had to play. There really
Yeah.
was only one option. They had
Yeah.
to raise the red rock for shot.
He had no other option. And again, had he missed it just a tiny bit, we again probably would not be discussing this shot.
Nope. And it was well made. It's that red one is removable. There is a shot now though for Canada.
All right, so now it's Kevin Martin's last shot. And I will tell you, they did not spend as much time discussing this shot as they
Thank
did the last
goodness.
one. Thank God. Because they only had like one option, really.
Well, they could have raised the yellow, but like we said, that's really tough. And Kevin Martin's such a good hitter.
Yeah, it's really tough, and they had a hit option, so they're gonna do it. So what he did is threw a bullet down to hit that red rock, or Murdoch's last thrown rock, out turn, and basically what they wanted to do is hit the outside red first, and then have it ricochet off to the red in the button, and have that squirt out completely, and they would
And
win
right
with the
with the back
yellow
yellow.
with the back yellow.
Right. Or if they got really, if that didn't work and maybe all of these skitter and they can win with the top with this one if everything went, but they were trying to win with this one just to pick this one off.
Yeah, I think honestly it's the best shot if he can throw a bullet, and he's so accurate with his like high
Yeah.
hit shots. I personally would probably not go with that
Oh
because I
yeah,
don't think
like
I can
this
throw that much weight.
I mean,
But
even though we both agreed we would have locked this end down rather than field because that's us and that's how we play. I would not want to be throwing this rock. But
no,
I
not at
remember
all.
thinking like at the time, well, I was kind of shell shocked with what I just seen, and I was trying to process everything. But looking at the shot again, like this is a shot Kevin Martin makes he makes these look easy, and he came out quite inside on his last rock.
Yeah, well, okay, again, this brings in, like, if we wanna talk about the psychology a little bit and how, what he must be thinking, or as a player, just I think he'd be a little frazzled after what happened the last end. Like, one, your team wasn't fully supportive of your shot, and you had also convinced yourself that by you throwing away your shot, he doesn't have a way to get shot rock, and he just proved you wrong. And because Martin thought that there was no way, whatever Murdoch did, that there was no way for him to get shot rock.
No, there was. Like, he acknowledged that. He acknowledged that Murdoch was going to get shot no matter what. The idea was that he felt that in throwing something, he was only going to make it worse for himself. He knew Murdoch would get shot no matter what he did. It's just in keeping it, he felt that in trying to blast it, Murdoch's going to get shot, but there's going to be more protective stuff. So
Okay, I take that back.
yeah, because he did acknowledge that like Murdoch is going to get shot, and in throwing the rock away, I keep it more open.
Mhm.
At least I remember him drawing up some scenarios of what could have happened if he had tried something else, and then not only would Murdoch have gotten shot, but then it was really going to be difficult to remove. Not that this is easy to remove, but for Kevin Martin, it is. So he came out quite a bit inside, as we said, and you could tell because John Morris called them on the second he let go.
And those guys were like pounding their
Yeah.
brooms.
And he
Oh,
was trying to almost nose the rock, but he hit it on an angle,
yeah.
hit the red rock instead of hitting it virtually straight back, hit it into the wrong red one, and just only tapped the shot rock about an inch and moved it even closer to the button. And that was it.
Yeah, and Scotland wins the world championship that year. Yeah, it was quite the end.
It
Everyone
was
was
very
just
interesting.
very baffled. I could bet you the locker room must have been so tense. I'm sure they didn't talk to I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't talk to each other for quite a while.
I
Especially
wonder.
knowing the personalities on that team.
I wonder, and like you said, to the point of the psychology of the game is that it's kind of when I think of myself, like I've lost plenty of games. I've lost plenty of games I should have won. We've all been there. But the interesting thing I wonder is this is a team that was accustomed to nothing but excellence and perfection. And I mean, not that I remember it too well, but I would dare say they were never really challenged much. They were by Scotland, but I think they went through that briar to get to the Worlds undefeated.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, I was like, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but I think they went undefeated at
Yeah,
that Briar, and they went undefeated at their playdowns. Like, they were the dominant team. I mean, it's no
exactly.
surprise
So
that they went to the Worlds and won the gold, and even at there, they dominated as
right.
well.
And Kevin Martin would never admit to this, but if you're going undefeated at everything you enter, then this is pretty easy for you, isn't it?
Mhm.
And so to have an actual situation develop where they're not sure what to do is pretty interesting. And I think that they had not been challenged enough, perhaps.
Well, that's why I kinda think they got a little cocky. I
Mhm.
think there's a little I think there's a little bit of cockiness that went in there, and like every team is going to lose games. And what makes this one hard is that it's not they didn't lose because someone missed a shot or someone missed a key shot. It was like a tactical decision that was made that I guess we can say there were a couple decisions made, but there's that I think the fact that they decided to throw away that first rock, it's easy to blame that decision on the loss. And that's hard to process and deal with if I were on that team.
Right, because no one's ever seen that.
Yeah, and in terms of team dynamics, if you were Hubert or anyone else on the team that wasn't Martin, and you were strongly against that shot, and you're like, okay, that shot cost us the world championship. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
It has an effect on the team, and obviously they bounced back, but I think they disbanded after the Olympics, right? Or they want one
Um,
more year?
yeah, they would have gone one or a couple more. I don't remember how many, but they did not play out the next Olympic cycle.
No.
I think they did go a couple more years because if I remember correctly, John Morris bailed on them as they were getting ready for the next Olympics. So they
Yeah.
went a couple more years.
On a separate note, do you know another thing that I noticed watching this game?
What's that?
And it just made me think of how the game has changed so much. Okay, well, not only have like, the boys aged quite a bit, they still look good. They still look good, but they look like babies back then. Um, the brooms. So during that game,
Yes.
everyone was using the sweeper closest to the rock was using the standard like synthetic broom, and the one farthest from the rock was using a synthetic hair broom.
That's something I still can't get over that just like
You don't see that anymore.
5 6 years ago that was totally fine and now it's completely illegal, and it's something that I've always been kind of surprised at, is that why has it taken our sport this long to figure out that these bristle brooms or whatever they're called, hair brooms, can be so crazy directional. Like it was Glenn Howard, right, who filmed himself and his son like doing these weird techniques and joysticking the rock wherever they wanted it to go.
Well, I think like the main use of these hair brooms was just to remove all the frost that was on the ice, especially in an arena
Yeah.
because of the weird temperature differences between like the stands and the ice. The ice does get pretty frosty, so the whole point was first sweeper kind of removes the frost, and then the back sweeper
Yeah.
is the one who's actually like
I
doing
still
stuff.
think that things in 2009 were just like, oh yeah, just a couple of years ago. And so when you see that and you're like, oh my god, those brooms.
Over a decade ago.
Wow.
But nothing else has changed besides that. I mean, it still looks the same. But yeah, those brooms kinda brought me back. I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. I think the strategy has changed too in a sense in that I don't recall ever seeing an end like that again. I think that these teams that are elite now are much more focused on their objective for each end.
Mhm. What was interesting too is just how much this end like, the effect it had in on curling in general. I mean, I know for at least for the rest of the year, if not the following one, it was like you met a curler and they're like, "Oh, you curl? What did you think about that men's
Yes,
final?"
we need
Like,
to mention that.
everyone wanted your opinion on it, and you can get into at the clubs after
Oh
games.
yeah. I remember the day of, so I don't remember it well, but it was like one of those where were you moments when this end happened. And I actually I remember I think I watched it at my grandparents' house. And when I got home, I went on, okay, it's 2009. Would I have gone on MSN?
Yeah,
Probably. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
MSN Messenger. Yeah, because
Yeah.
Facebook just started.
Okay, yeah. So you and I would have talked about the game. I think we probably chatted about like, oh my god, did you see that? But before I know I talked to you at some point, but I remember going on Facebook and everybody, every curler we knew, including some who were not curlers, had a comment. Most of them were pretty. That was the worst decision ever. Kevin Martin is a like they were. A lot of them were really really harsh,
Yeah.
and some people were going in there and defending Kevin Martin for the because really, who are we to say what Kevin Martin should do? So some of were going in and defending and going, no, you're wrong.
If anyone knows the game better than anyone else, it's Martin, or he's, like, at least one of the
That's
top
right.
curlers
And
as
5 minutes
well.
after, it was like, no, like let's wait 12 years for us to podcast about this, and we'll tell you why it wasn't that bad.
But it's interesting too because I feel like, a lot of club curlers are really invested in watching curling on TV, and, um, at the club, we see it quite often. There are some questionable, um, shots that are called, and some of them are made because of their, like, technical ability and whatnot. But yeah, sometimes it's interesting to see, based on someone's knowledge on curling and their knowledge of, and understanding of curling strategy and how that
Yeah,
affected the outcome of how they perceive that end was really interesting too.
yeah,
And like
and
I
it
said, it's
was.
still used as a tool, whenever if you ever go to like a training camp or take a course or anything like that,
Mhm.
and you come to a lesson where they talk about strategy. If the instructor doesn't bring it up, I'm pretty sure someone's gonna ask a question about it, and they're gonna ask your thoughts on it. So I know when I was
Yeah,
instructing, everyone always asked that question. What did you think about the 2009 men's curling final? So
Yeah, it's come up with me too. Like people have asked me, and I think well, I dropped it in there today as we went through through the end, and it's that I don't really care about what he did with his first rock, whether you threw it away or went for something. And I think that the general rule in strategy is that by the time it comes to the skip's rocks, there's going to be things that make sense to the skip. There's going to be things that make more sense to you or to whoever. But
Hmm.
at this point, let the skip throw what unless they're like about to do something like accidentally throw the wrong rock color or forget that this is their first rock. But if they have a vision for what they want, my idea is just you let them do it.
Yeah. Well, like we
And
said earlier, if you manage to convince them to do another shot that they were so keen on making, odds are that that shot is going to be missed when they throw
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and if you really want to get into it and say, well, where did this go wrong? It did not go wrong with him making the decision to throw the rock away. It went wrong, as we pointed out, where they chose not to peel.
Yep. But they
And
chose to play the end aggressively.
they did, and unfortunately for them,
That's how it ended as
that's
well.
what that's what they created. And which again is something which I admit, full disclosure, I would have done too.
I guess if ever, Kevin Martin, if you are listening to this, or if ever we meet him again in real life, I guess we can ask him, being like, "What did you think
I'm
about
sure
your?"
he'd love to talk to us about this.
Instead of asking
I'm sure
him about his throwaway, be like, "What were you thinking when you were calling Kennedy to do a tit and roll? Wouldn't you rather feel the guards up?"
But that's it. It's like because we've done coaching as well, and one of the things is that one of the things we try to teach is what's your objective for the end, and to not lose too much sight of that, because there's a lot of things that we have ingrained. Like I know I've mentioned uh, growing up as a junior boy, I'm always like, oh, hit, we got to hit, and you got to coach yourself out of wait, no, do we have to do that? And so often, when is a hit and roll to the button behind a guard not a good shot? It's so if you can make that, that's wonderful. But this was the one context where you didn't want to get sucked into that, and
Yeah,
you
there's
did.
definitely rules of thumb that we teach junior curlers, depending on where you are in the game. Like as first end, if you are a more defensive team, like you automatically draw to the top four, or if you don't have the hammer, or you put a guard up if you want to be more aggressive, or keep the play to the sides if you do have
Hmm.
hammer. And if like the last, oh, and this is also another question that I think every team should align on, and one that at least I was taught as a junior, is how do in the second to last end, how do you want to go into the last end? Like, would you
Yes.
rather be would you rather be like down two or down one with hammer, or up one without hammer?
Yeah.
And that kind of like how as a team you want to play that last end will determine how you play the second to last end, because sometimes you have an option to, like, are you playing to steal, or are you playing to clean, like to blank? So
Yeah.
you go into that last end how you as a team decided to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And how you I've read that or one of the ways people choose to do that is they say like, okay, well, let's look at what's our record when we're up by two without. What's our record when we're tied with, or when you've got a choice of how to enter your 10th end, and you should play it based on what you are better at. Of course, good luck finding those stats for anybody that's not super elite.
But no, I said, if you're a competitive team, if your coach isn't tracking, there usually is someone tracking. But again, you don't always have the luxury to make that decision. Sometimes you just have to go with.
Sorry, I'm going to say one more controversial thing here,
Oh
just
no.
because we've already made a bunch of enemies, probably. So I'm not going to mention names here, but like you and I have done some coaching. Um, you've done like a lot of clinics all around the world. I've done some coaching with some different teams at a more local level. So we've gone around, we've spoken to many other coaches, some who are very certified, or some who have a lot more credentials than I do. And of course, like you mentioned, this always comes up as a topic. And even from coaches that I feel are way more, have a lot more experience than I do, I hear from a lot of them, oh, what a stupidly played end by Kevin, or what a stupid decision to throw the rock away. And I've heard it from players, I've heard it from, and want to say like, hey, I'm not much of a coach and you're very decorated, but you're wrong.
Oh.
I don't
I
know.
mean,
I don't know if you felt that, but I've seen a lot of people say get on Kevin Martin for throwing the rock away, and it's like everyone from people we curl with to people that are very high up there in the coaching echelon.
but I guess we also have to mention, like, there's no right answer.
Yeah, that's
Um,
what I was trying to say is that there's no sense in debating that
no.
shot. If you really want to go after where this went wrong, I think we have to look back to the how we got to this situation.
Mhm. I mean, if my personal opinion, come Martin's first shot, I personally do not agree with throwing it away. I would have, if I were on that team, I would be in the same camp as Hebert and Kennedy and Morris. Um, but again, like, there's a
There's no
lot of
sense in debating that, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But if we're talking strategy in general, some people are more they prefer hits. Some people prefer draws more. Some people are okay with having a very aggressive end and having lots of rocks in play. Others people can't handle that and they get very stressed if there's a lot of rocks in play. And so your preference as to how like what shots you prefer are definitely going to affect um your decision making as to like regarding strategy and how you know how you think about it and if you agree or disagree or and whatnot. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's I guess that's that. We should end it there before we get ourselves into more trouble.
That's right. So yeah, that's a lot to say. I guess my final thought is back when I went on Facebook and it was everybody had their thoughts on Kevin Martin's 10th end and were saying everything. Of course, I wanted to chime in, but I couldn't decide like, am I for this, against it? I'm just kind of enjoying that. Hey, look, everybody's talking about curling on Facebook. So I can't remember what I said. I think some people were everybody had Kevin Martin in their status. So I said something like, I don't know, hey, I burnt my dinner tonight. It was Kevin Martin's fault. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
Just I
just
had to get Kevin Martin in there and like blame him for something like everybody else was doing.
throw him under the bus. Yeah, I guess at the club games afterward, be like, "What would Kevin Martin do? Throw it away." I know that was like a joke that came up quite a bit. Like, well, what if you just throw it away? But no, you're amazing, Kevin.
Yes,
Um, yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it for this episode. I guess now that we've made it, we don't need to talk about it anymore. And if we ever get the question again about what our thoughts are about that end, we can just refer people to this episode of the podcast, and we
that's
never need
right.
to talk about it again.
That's right.
All right, so that's it for today. Catch us next week. Oh, and don't forget to leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. What are your thoughts of the end? And also follow us, give us
That's
a
right.
like on Instagram at
You
Behind
can
the Tee
call us out the
Curling.
way we called out Kevin Martin. I'm just
Exactly.
kidding. We love him.
Yeah, you can tell us if we're completely wrong and miss the mark here.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, bye.
Bye.